Shalom and welcome to NeshamaCast, exploring Jewish spiritual care today, brought to you by Neshama, Association of Jewish Chaplains. I'm your host, Rabbi Ed Bernstein. NAJC President Rabbanit Alyssa Thomas Newborn held a public conversation with Basi Taubes, Director of Community Outreach for Amecha, an organization that helps navigate matters of aging and end of life through the lenses of Jewish wisdom and halakha, Jewish law. This conversation took place in a Zoom gathering on January 8th, 2026, and we are pleased to share the recording with our NeshamaCast audience. Without further ado, here is Rabbanit Alyssa Thomas Newborn.
Erev Tov, everyone. It's wonderful to be together for those who are with us tonight in this wonderful learning opportunity, as well as those who will be listening to this afterward as part of our NeshamaCast podcast. We are very, very blessed at NAJC to be learning tonight from Basi Taubes, who I will be speaking about in just a moment. We are having this conversation tonight about end-of-life care, specifically in relationship to Amecha, which is an organization that very much so provides end-of-life care resources, really informed by Jewish wisdom and halacha. And we're going to hear much more from Basi about Amecha, which literally means if not now, when. We're going to hear much more about it, but this is part of a much wider effort from NAJC, which is for us as Jewish chaplains working, the gold standard of the professional field in which we are serving, that we are building more of the connections with our J part of NAJC. So Neshama Association of Jewish Chaplains, we're really trying to build more and more partnerships with the Jewish organizations and the Jewish community to make sure that we as Jewish chaplains are meeting the needs and serving the wider community. So that this is, one of the wonderful ways in which we're getting to partner. I am personally thrilled to be spending some time with Basi tonight talking. I really admire and respect Basi and all of the work that she does. I also happen to live in her neck of the woods in Teaneck. And I've had the privilege of presenting with her in person at my shul at Netivot Shalom in Teaneck, and learning from her in a variety of different settings, including an advanced care planning workshop that she ran in our neighborhood. And she's really, I think, brought so much to Amecha. I'm going to read her bio in a moment, but I did want to just share personally that I have benefited from Amecha's resources and Amecha's support professionally in terms of accessing their resources, which we'll learn about in a little bit. And also personally, I have definitely turned to Amecha's support systems for myself, for my family, and Basi in particular. I think it's a really amazing resource for us to have connections with. So again, this is part of a wider effort for us as Jewish chaplains in the professional field to partner more with Jewish organizations that are addressing things where we overlap and connect, and just really expand our ability to serve those whom we're caring for. So now let's get into hearing a little bit more about our wonderful speaker. So Beth, her name is Beth. She goes by Basi, so you can call her either. But Beth Basi Taubes is a RN. She's a nurse, a registered nurse. She's the director of community outreach at Amecha, which is the hat she's wearing tonight. She spent over 30 years as a certified oncology and breast care nurse, providing her valuable insight into supporting families during their most challenging times. Basi is certified as a health coach and active leader in many community health initiatives, and this includes support groups for breast cancer patients, and she's also a longtime Rebbitzin of Congregation Zichron Mordechai in Teaneck, New Jersey. She runs many Amecha programs and workshops in different communities, and she helps people plan meaningfully for their healthcare journey. So we are thrilled to be able to have this opportunity to schmooze, learn, and really get to know both Basi and her work and Amecha's resources and how we can collaborate more. So thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Alyssa, for inviting me. Thank you, Allison, for all the work you've done behind the scenes to make this night possible. So thank you. It's really a privilege to be here with you, Alyssa, and all the wonderful people from Neshama that are on this call with us. So I'm going to do my elevator speech about Amecha because I'm the director of community outreach. I'm curious, just in the chat, if you can tell me if those of you that know about Amecha just put down a yes or no, because it gives me an idea of like, how are we, do people know who we are? Since my job is to make sure that people know who we are. So that will be very helpful. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Amecha, but hopefully you'll get a chance to hear more about our organization as we are in conversation today. So our tagline is that we help people navigate aging and end of life care with Jewish wisdom and halacha. That means Jewish law. So that's what we do, and it's very broad. We do a lot of education for rabbis, for physicians, for lay leaders, for chaplains, and everybody who's in this space. And we also obviously support families in many different ways. So anyway, that's just in 5 seconds. But I hope as we talk today and that we have more dialogue, that you'll find out more about the organization and how we're available, hopefully, to support some of your needs. And if there are needs that are not being met, that maybe we could actually find other ways to develop things together.
Wonderful. So you mentioned that yes, there are resources available for chaplains. We know that, well, I know that Amecha was not originally created to provide resources for chaplains. That's not, the basis of Amecha as the primary audience. And we would love to hear a little bit more about what brings you to the conversation with chaplains, specifically NAJC, and also the vision behind Amecha, how it's grown and expanded.
Okay, thank you. So the truth is, I will talk to you both personally about my journey with working with chaplains, but also from an organizational perspective. So we were actually a different organization, really only about 3 years young, since we've changed course and moved in this direction to support people that are in the helping fields. So the truth is that what happened with this particular project was really because of the work that that the chaplains do. They're often in this space where we are supporting people. Actually, very often they're the first face in this space, and also a trusted person in that space. But what we discovered from some conversation, partially because actually Alyssa and I have a relationship, which actually helped, and she also has a relationship with our CEO, Rabbi Shlomo Brody, that we discovered that there were areas that the chaplains were each creating their own resources. And we spoke to many chaplains actually over this past year, maybe some of you I even spoke to. And many of the chaplains were telling me that, yes, they have resources that they each individually have created. So Alyssa and I had a conversation about, could we get a group of people from Neshama together? And could we come up with something where we could put something together on a website where that would be a resource for chaplains that they could go to. We're going to show that to you later, of different things that the chaplains were maybe had on their own, but they didn't have it as a group. And we tried to create some of those things and also take from some of the resources that we already had, but put them on one place, one page where the chaplains could get that information. But we really came to this because it was it was natural for us to be working with you, chaplains. We're doing this work with the patients that are calling us or with the doctors that are calling us, and to find that we can also now be a resource for you.
Amazing. So we're going to go back to the website in a moment, and actually take a look inside so everyone can have that experience. But I just want to ask, can you give us a little bit of like the day in the life of Amecha? Like what, for example, we said informed by halacha. Like, is this primarily catering to, Orthodox Jewish patients, families? What kinds of questions come up for Amecha? And then, we'll kind of segue into looking at some of the resources you created specifically for chaplains.
So, medicine, I've been in medicine for a very long time. So I will tell you, and you've probably seen this in your own practices as you're seeing people in the hospital. So sort of with medicine, which has been sort of amazing that people can live a very long time. We have a lot of resources to extend life. Sometimes we can really extend quality of life. But with that we have discovered we've also extended the dying process. And in that process, we sometimes find that people have questions. Some are general medical ethical questions. In most of your hospitals, if you're working in a hospital, there's an ethics committee. So there are medical ethics that come out. And then there's like a subsection of that, which I think is really the space that often Amecha falls into, where people will have particularly Jewish medical ethic questions. And then there's a group that are Orthodox people may have a different group of questions. But the truth is, Jews in general may have questions. So it depends where you come from. People from all denominations can have different questions. So for instance, people may have a question about signing a DNR, do not resuscitate. What I find today, and maybe you have found this too, as soon as people walk into a hospital, they will ask, especially if someone's of a certain age, do you have a DNR? And I'll just share a story that we tell at Amecha. Someone came in with their grandmother and she had a bad cough and they were really just checking her out. And as soon as she walked in, one of the nurses asked, do you have a DNR? And she, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? You didn't tell me. She had a bad cold, right? But this is the reality. This is the environment that we are living in. But there are times that signing a DNR is absolutely appropriate and the right thing. And sometimes though families, even though that is absolutely the right thing, as you've discovered and we discovered, when people are making decisions, and it doesn't actually matter which religion you're in or what your beliefs are, that when you have someone that you love dearly who's ill in a bed, that sometimes logic and what people are saying to you, you can't take it in. It's too painful. And you need someone that you trust to sometimes be your interpreter. So there are people that are going to interpret, what does the medicine mean? They don't even understand, what does it mean to be resuscitated? What does it mean if my heart stops? So sometimes we're there as interpreter to explain what that means. And sometimes there is what we call a halachic, that Jewish law question. Is that appropriate for someone at this time to sign that document? And I will share with you just one thing, and I don't want to let Alyssa speak and ask some questions, but this is a question I often ask. I ask in my audiences when I speak to them on these topics. Do you know the difference between, and you can think about this yourself, do you know the difference between a heart attack and a cardiac arrest? And I will tell you that when I've asked this question into large groups of people, I get at least about an 85% of people do not know. And the reason I share that with you, those of you who are taking care of patients near the end of life or helping families navigate this, that they're asked extremely complicated questions about their loved ones without the medical information to even know exactly what it is that they are answering the question to. So that's, I would say, very broad. We get questions about hydration, feeding someone when they can no longer swallow. So these are the types of questions. Pain medicine, should we put our loved one into hospice? So that's just the kind of questions that we're asked at Amecha.
Amazing. So I just want to name, I think, for those of us who maybe this is the first time we're learning about Amecha, it is one of several different Jewish organizations that specialize in providing support at end of life or in advanced care planning. And there's other organizations that are less focused, let's say, on the Jewish halacha or the Jewish legal practice. So the questions I think coming up for Amecha are very specific. In particular, I think that a lot of how we can sort of perceive or make sense of when to in our toolbox as chaplains pull out Amecha, is that Amecha is a resource certainly for those who are halakhically observant, for those who identify as Orthodox, and it's a resource where there's a combination of really meaningful, supportive content combined with very practical intervention. So I'll give you a personal example. At the hospital I work at, I happen to be in a family meeting, and one of the children, and this was actually a family that was not particularly observant, but the patient, the father, was observant. So the children knew, like, they wanted to call and make sure that whatever they were discussing was connected. Any decisions they were making were in alignment with halacha, Jewish law, but they didn't themselves necessarily know who to turn to in that moment. So they actually had reached out to Amitai. And they had called, for Jewish legal advice and also for support. And I thought it was very interesting, to find myself, like, we know as chaplains that we're, especially if we're in a family meeting or if we're part of palliative care teams or hospice, we are often the Jewish voice in that space, and we are joining and supporting Jewish people of all backgrounds, and sometimes, of course, non-Jewish people too. We're there as multi-faith chaplains. But certainly if we're there to support a Jewish family, we it doesn't matter what denomination they are. It doesn't matter if they're halakhically observant. It doesn't, none of that. That's not really what it's about. It's about being there and meeting the person where they are and helping them access their own spiritual resources. So part of what I want to pull out of this is that I think this is one of the tools in our toolbox to make sure that we are aware of and that we can access, because it might be a family like the one I described, where they don't know where to turn, and so they found Amitai, or it might be, a family that has been very actively involved with Amitai, or resources that we as chaplains can offer through them. So I want to shift now into asking Basi if she can tell us more about, we mentioned these chaplaincy resources, this collaboration with NHAC and Amitai on our resource page, and the beautiful work that you've done. We actually are going to pull that up. So Basi, I'll ask if you're willing to share your screen, just to get a sense of what are some of the resources that we're touching on that are out there, and just to give you a little bit of a taste of where Amitai is. And again, this is one of the tools in the toolbox, but I think it's an essential tool for us to have on our radar.
Okay. Thank you, Alyssa. One of the things I do want to mention, just piggybacking what you just said, to make sure that, one thing that we have, I think that's unique about our particular resource, we have a 24/7 hotline. So I will put that in the chat near the end. And so if, put that in your phone, that you just know that you can reach us 24/7. When you call that number, will either, if it's an emergency, it doesn't matter what time that phone will be answered, or if it's something that someone can get back to you, you can leave a message. But that's available to both you and available to your patients and their families. Just let you know about that. That's our 24/7 hotline. So this is the resource page we put together. I recommend that you please on your own take a look at it. And also that if you have any comments, anything that you think, oh, I think we'd like to see this here, or we'd like this change, very open to doing that. So if you can't find, you don't want to put just amitai.org, and then you could click and write chaplains, and this page will come up. So it's easy to find. So this is just in general support for chaplains working within the Jewish community. And so these are the resources: prayer. So prayer is the first one. We have these different prayers. And again, this was really collaboratively done with Neshama. We did this, some of the prayers that people were looking for, they're in both Hebrew and in English. Some of them are transliterated. And then also that you can, with little explanations about, very short, 2-3 lines, just explaining why you would say this particular prayer. So I think this is very and it's just easy to access. Sometimes people don't know, they want to say a prayer. What is it they should say? Tehillim or Psalms are often said. So we have Psalms for healing, Psalms for Psalms that are said before medical procedure, Shema, something for bodily function, Asher Etzar. If someone wants to have a name change, it's here. Shofar blowing, in case someone's in the hospital at that time, bedside prayers that someone wants to say if someone's critically ill, and Vijoy, sort of the confessional prayer that's said before someone dies, either by themselves or their family. Prayer for that people pray for themselves and for gratitude and healing. So you can just download those and take a look at those. I just want to talk to you, it wasn't easy to access on this page, but you can get this easily on any of our pages, this Advanced Healthcare Directive. I'll just show you a little bit what that looks like. So we call it the Nativot. It's the Advanced Health Guide. And part of this healthcare guide, we've put in a conversation guide for families to have how to while it's that part of this is not legal, the Advanced Healthcare Directive is a legal document. It just in the state of New Jersey and New York, it just needs to be witnessed. You don't need to have it notarized. Some of the other states you do, but this is actually you can access. I'll just show you here. You decide we have it in all these countries. You check the one in the United States if it's someone here in the United States. The conversation guide is not part of the legal document, but it gives people a place to have conversation about what's important to them, and what they would want their families to do. So this is just general, and you can find out more about this. Again, I'm just going to give you an overview of what this would look like, and you can download the guide here for the families that you're working with as well. We have our hotline is here, so if you don't write it down, it's on this page as well, our halachic helpline, if you need answers to any questions. And these are just guidelines that Rabbi Dr. Jason Weiner, who is, I think, and what I know is one of your members and leaders, that he put together on many of these different topics. If the patient, an Orthodox patient, is in the hospital on any one of these holidays, if someone wants to find out more, either about the holiday or if there are certain particular laws that someone may need to know about on any one of these, this is a resource for you to be able to take a look at this. And then, of course, if there are more questions, always reach out to us.
Yeah. No, so I think this is wonderful, and I appreciate you walking through it. And as you had mentioned, we had a conversation initially of sort of like what are the needs that are out there. And I'll just to reflect personally, as you mentioned at the beginning, we all, those of us who are working in this field, we have our things that we go to and turn to. And we know, like, if it's for a patient that, maybe I'm a certain denomination, but I have these other resources that are ready for someone if needed, or we just, again, sort of going to that toolbox. I think that, Rabbi Jason Weiner is someone who is very, very beloved in our NHAC community family. And his guidebook that he wrote on care for traditional Jewish observant patients in the hospital, the fact that it's accessible here is I think a huge thing. You can get on your phone, you can get anywhere you are. But just that, we piece things together, but there's also, I know for me, sometimes, like, I've pulled up video on my phone from Chabad. And that was one of the things I had said to Basi, like, I think it would be really great for NAJC and Amecha to work together on exploring how we can just get more resources out there. And I just want to share, parenthetically, that NAJC, as part of a wider initiative that we're really excited about, is we are revamping our website. There's going to be more information out there to include resources for a variety of different denominations. But I think what Amecha has beautifully put together is sort of like the model of a lot of the Orthodox content that we need, and it's there and accessible. And I've actually already shared it with our I work at New York Presbyterian, and I shared it with my interfaith chaplaincy team, because all the time chaplains are asking, like, where is the Jewish thing? Like the Bibles, the rosary, the Qurans, like they're donated and there's a lot of them available. But I think that knowing where to turn for certain Jewish prayers in life, when someone is, certainly if they're not Jewish, but if they're not, let's say, part of one denomination or another, it's not as easily accessible. So I just really want to appreciate that Amecha has put so much time and effort and wisdom into trying to figure out how to support those who are providing the support on the front lines. And I think how you did it here was really beautiful. So I just want to thank you for that.
No, thank you so much for your team that helped work with that. Really appreciate their input and insight into that. So it was a team effort.
And it will grow and grow. We're so excited. So I want to just ask that anyone who might have questions, if you want to put it in the chat, feel free to add as we keep going, because we do have more questions that we're going to be asking to flesh out a little bit more about Amecha. But I think at this point, there's probably already questions coming up. So feel free to throw them in the chat and we can integrate them in. I love Cheryl Weiner had just said, I've created a holiday guide for everyday holidays for chaplains and hospice facilities and organizations, and that's non-Orthodox. So Cheryl, we need to connect you with Allison and include that, because we want on our NAJC website to include the resources from our members. But I think I am so grateful that you shared that, because part of what you're naming is that this is a need that, like you've created something. There's multiple people who have created in this area, and this isn't new. But I think the ability to access and feel supported, and for it to be mainstream, like it's not, like Amecha in particular is an organization that is like through BASI doing a lot of outreach into the Jewish community to try to decrease stigma around these conversations, and just, to get more of this out there. So like, I can tell you, I know BASI has spoken at like all the congregations in our area, and there's, including like Reform and Conservative and, other denominations, or conversations with Shomer Collective or Kavod V'Nichum, that the interaction between Amecha and other end-of-life care Jewish organizations across denominations is also something that I think is really beautiful. I don't know if you want to speak to that now, Basi. I know there's some upcoming programming, but just maybe if you could speak a little to the relationship of Amecha with other Jewish end-of-life organizations.
Right. So I think that we all have respect for the fact that we're all in this space, which can be extremely rewarding, but it can also be extremely painful. I think each one of these organizations are really trying to normalize conversation around death and mortality, like how we can have these conversations, not just we can have the conversations so that we're not always dealing with people in crisis, that we help people in the Jewish community and elsewhere make a plan and have a plan that is meaningful for them. And then we very often, even though some of our beliefs may not be exactly the same, our goals are to really support and help. And even to have an interesting dialogue over a conversation that we may not have agreement about, like halachically Jewish law, we may not all see it the same way, but our goals are to really support people through this process and maybe just change the attitude in general about conversation around mortality, and see if we can make this process easier and not feel that people always walk into it with a crisis, and that people that do this work feel supported, and that we support our patients and we support their families. I think our goals are all very similar.
Yeah, and I love that your professional experience working as a nurse in oncology and like in just in a variety of settings, like what it is to need these, the physical, the like the medical support, the spiritual support, the psychological support, and how to bring that all together. And to that point, I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more to the areas in which chaplains intersect with Amecha, or with, we're talking about end-of-life care organizations. But where is the intersection between those of us who are working as chaplains and the work that you're doing?
Right. So I think, chaplains are, first of all, they're very trusted. They're a trusted partner, and they're in the hospital. Most of the work that we do, we're somewhat remote. We're like a little bit removed. What we're hearing is dialogue, but you, the chaplain, are actually there in the hospital with the patients, with the families, with the physicians, with the whole system. And I think that very often that you're called on by family members and want to guide, give advice, but also to support. So I think in those ways that we're in very often the same space. Sometimes the families is because the families are reaching out to us and they're also working with you. But often I think it's because you're in that space and then you need to, okay, we need support in this area. Here are the people that we have a phone number. We have someone that we can call to also either explain perhaps why this patient, maybe we're trying to navigate between the physician and the family. And maybe you and I can maybe give examples of that, Alyssa. You and I have dealt with that a lot, where we will have a family member or family that will be in conflict with the medical team. And you'll be called in to see, okay, the medical team will be calling in to ask you, could you help us navigate with this family? The family will be calling in and saying, could you please, we can't deal with the physicians. So sometimes that, you'll manage that, but other times it might be, we can be a resource for that. How can we help you navigate that way in a way that maybe the family can hear, and maybe we can also speak to the physicians to see whether or not we can maybe change the way the dialogue is going on so the family and the doctors are not in conflict, which very often we see there's so much conflict between the family and the physician that actually the care of the person in the bed sometimes gets almost ignored because they're sending so much energy there. And I think very often, you'll tell me, Phyllis, I'm correct. Very often you are called in that space. And so we can be a resource for you there.
Yeah, so definitely, I think there's, whether someone's in a hospital setting or long-term care or hospice or, community chaplaincy, which we have a lot of community chaplains. I think being in that place of both providing spiritual pastoral support and also advocating for whatever the patient or family's values and needs are, that's a space that, is uncomfortable, but that also we inhabit often. The liminal space, it's one I think that can be a real source of Kiddush Hashem, of sanctifying God's name, of creating goodness and positivity. But yeah, I think especially, again, in the hospital I serve in, I do have a lot of Orthodox families that I work with, really like Hasidic families, very, very, very traditional families who, even just culturally, there's just such stark differences between the secular healthcare culture and the culture that they're coming from before they come into the hospital. And so I think for those of us who do find ourselves serving that population or perhaps identify with that population, I think that, being able to advocate around what those religious needs are and to draw from, the kinds of resources that you provide where we could feel even more supported. Because I think that's part of what I hear you saying is like, we're not alone in that space. That, I guess I'll just say, I know there's, organizations like Refuah Helpline, like patient liaison organizations that will often, really, really, the family calls and says, like, I want you to be the person to talk to my family. Like, you talk to the family, you talk to the doctors. Like, I don't my health literacy is very low. I've always hated that phrase, by the way. Like, health literacy just sounds very, I don't know, haughty, but there, I used it, I guess. But just that feeling like I don't understand what's going on. Or you said it's so emotional. It's like going in one ear and out the other. That having additional support can be very meaningful. And so sometimes that's the role of the chaplain. Sometimes it's a patient liaison, or it's an organization like Amecha coming in and providing that support. But I'm also, I think that a really important piece there is for it to not become something that's triangulating. So I think something I've seen is that when end of life care questions come up around Jewish law, that sometimes the medical team really wants to feel close to the family and the patient. And by introducing something else, they might feel like, wait, who's this rabbi who's telling me that, like, they're not here. Like, I don't know what they, do they, but when done the right way, we know that calling that rabbi or having this conversation, bringing in outside clergy, like having that connection can ultimately bring the medical team and the family even closer, the patient even closer. And so I think it's just, again, another tool to have of like how it can be really helpful to have us just build more of a connection between chaplains and the work that you do. So we do have some questions in here. I just want to highlight. Can you speak to the issue of cremation versus burial due to financial or cultural issues? So, for example, feeling no one will visit at the graveside, families dispersed, more the ecological things. Sometimes that's one of the ways people approach cremation when they do Shiva, etc. So, Cheryl, thank you for putting that question out there of just, maybe how Amecha approaches cremation versus burial.
Yeah, so I have to say right now it's a little outside of what there is an organization that really deals with that. It's not, it's a little outside of really actually what I actually can really bring any really kind of expertise into. So actually I don't really feel comfortable answering that question. I can give you a resource on where you can find more information on that, but that's a little outside of what we do. So I know, Felicity, you may have some other things to say about that.
No, I think I very much I hear where Cheryl's coming from, because I think that's a
Yeah,
question we hear all the time. And there
yeah,
is,
yeah.
especially with families that are halakhically observant, there's, a very strong feeling of not cremating. And then we might encounter families where there's a variety of reasons why it makes sense for them and they feel connected to it. In the, for the reasons that were given. I think I could definitely see a situation where a family is trying to figure out some of these questions and they are trying to figure out who to ask and turn to. And I've again encountered, I think, in the hospital setting, families who, they're like, we want to do it the Jewish way, whatever that is. Likely that will somehow be like Chabad or something, but like, what is the Jewish way to do something? And so, yeah, I think, there can be questions about, depending on which denomination or which community someone's coming in and how they're going to answer that. So I think I would feel comfortable saying, I think, just knowing Amecha's resources and knowing that it's primarily an Orthodox organization, that there would probably not be discussions about cremation. But I think that the sensitivity of those involved in Amecha would be able to address questions as
No
they come up.
question. I think when we sometimes come into with questions about this is really when there is conflict within the family about what to do. I think that if a family decides that this is what the person wants, that the family want, I mean, honestly, we would really have very little role. We would try, obviously, because we're not in that space. I think that maybe the times that people would call us is about, can we deal with family conflict around this? And is there a way that, obviously it's an Orthodox organization. We believe in burial and burying the body and not cremation. So could we get the family to see the beauty in that? If they were open to that, it's not really the space we're in, other than if they asked us the question, to try to encourage them to not have cremation. But there are organizations that really do a lot of work in this area.
Yeah. No, and I think the point of like that place of tension where maybe people have different practices within their family, different denominations, different backgrounds, even different religions within their family, how these kinds of really tough questions are navigated, because they get at, some of our core values and also the legacy that we leave. I also want to highlight in here, Joanne wrote that it would be helpful for us to discuss the underutilization of hospice by the Orthodox community and how to reach out. And when you say how to reach out, I don't know if you can add to this in the chat. Do you mean how we can better reach out to the Orthodox community, or how the Orthodox community can better reach out? I don't know if you feel comfortable adding to that. But Basi, if you want to begin speaking about an underutilization of hospice.
Right. So I think, again, this is some of the work that we're really trying to do within the community, is to have an understanding about what is it that hospice does. Because, and I'm sure you know this, because right now, very often, I shouldn't say everybody, but right now, people very often don't call hospice, or hospice is brought in when the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, is literally at the front door. So then the reputation, and I hear this, the reputation is they went on hospice and in 24 hours they died. Yes, that's because you called them 24 hours before the person was going to die. So that's the underutilization of hospice, but we're actually fighting, I think, that we are fighting that experience that has been had in the Jewish community, not just in the Jewish community. Actually, I think hospice is underutilized in general. So this is part of the education of telling people of what benefits hospice has to the Orthodox community, has to all people, that at some point treatment is not beneficial, is actually not keeping the person alive longer. It's just giving them medicine that's very toxic. And really, as we know, very often that that person actually, we know we have so much data that some people in hospice actually live longer and live significantly better than people that are getting treatment. Now, depending, I just took a quick look that says, the end of medical care, right? But it usually, in most states or types of hospices used, you are more limited in what kind of care you're going to get. So places that I find that we sometimes run into conflict, and it depends on the hospice, are things like hydration, if the person can no longer drink. So these are areas that if we know in advance and we're trying to work with people, how can we have conversation with family members about that? About, well, if they're not in the hospital, if they're not on hospice, they can get IV hydration. So most hospices won't allow that. There are some that will. I actually heard someone speak that they would give the patient, they're basically treating a little bit the family, because the family felt, so, what do you mean I'm not going to give my mother anything to drink? She's going to die of dehydration, right? So these types of things of how we can support family members with education so they don't feel like they somehow gave up on their family member, that maybe there was one more thing to do. So I think we're making some headway. It's been slow, but we're definitely making progress in this area. But again, I think it's just back to dialogue and conversation and education.
I would add to that. I think there's, sometimes a misconception that hospice means expediting the dying process, which certainly for, Orthodox patients and families is, not an option, especially halachically, within Jewish law. And I often think of it as like balancing not expediting the dying process and not prolonging pain and suffering. And hospice at its best is really trying to hold all of it, as you're saying, treating the family, treating the patient, giving them, sometimes they kind of thriving in hospice. Sometimes people are, they've been given 6 months and it goes on, and I think that we've all probably seen that. But yeah, there is a misconception that sometimes when someone goes on hospice or even palliative care, which isn't necessarily in a hospice setting, that can mean they're no longer getting aggressive treatment and they're no longer getting good care, because aggressive treatment is often viewed as, more attention or more care or, more intervention. And so I think, a lot of it is about education, and my understanding, and Basti, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is that is part of the mission of Amecha, is to try to build more education into the communities where they otherwise would have less information about how to utilize these resources.
Right. I mean, I find in general, there's just a big void. Even the hospice has been around for a long time. There's just a big void on patients and just families understanding about hospice. And again, I'm gonna go back to what I said, I'm not repeating myself, but I think that perception, because people very often call hospice so close to the time that the person was going to die, that ends up being the message out there. I mean, I just had a family I was dealing with now, and she decided she wanted to come home, and really supported them in that decision. And so for the last 2-3 weeks of her life, her family came to see her in her house and chatted with her and stopped the aggressive treatment. But it was not easy on her husband. It was like very difficult on him, the sense that maybe he gave up on her too early. Because the idea that this person that you love so much is going to die is so unbearable that maybe I could do one more thing to keep them alive. So I think that there's just, in that space, there's work for us to do. There's a lot of work for us to do, that this is the process. There's nothing we can do. There's like the whatever the disease is, it's won that battle. All we can do is make this time as pleasant or as comfortable as possible. And I think that people have more faith in medicine. I haven't been in medicine. I think the idea that medicine is limited, I think that most people don't understand that medicine doesn't always win, that there's a point it doesn't, and there's something else we can do to support people. So I'm going to be a broken record about this. We need to keep talking about it, keep educating people about it. But this message about medicine being limited and that we haven't done away with death and people don't live forever, and what is it that we can do to make people's the end of life meaningful for people as much as we can, support them physically, make them comfortable. And if possible, if it's doable, that people don't die in hospitals, that they can die at home or in an inpatient hospice if that's not something that the family can deal with.
Not to put you on the spot, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Um, I know that you're aware of the medical aid in dying discussions that are out there. And I know that, even in some of our chaplaincy conferences that are coming up, that's a really, really big topic. I'm just wondering if, to whatever extent you feel comfortable, you can speak to that. The idea of good death and how Amecha is supporting, and also how we as chaplains can work together with you to serve a population that is going to turn to Amecha.
Right. Yes, Alyssa, you put me on the spot. But
I
we've
just
been
know
talking
you
about
have
this.
something wonderful to say about this. So
No,
that's
I think this idea about the medical aid in dying, for those of you who don't know, that was just passed in the state of New York. There are some criteria. So you have to have someone has to say that you have less than 6 months to live. So I think that we have to, those of us, as an Orthodox organization, we're not going to support physician-assisted suicide. But what it does bring to us, so what is it we're going to work with our people that we care about, our family members? It just passed in Illinois. Eventually it's going to pass in most of the states. That what can we do to encourage people, honestly, within the Orthodox community, not to take this as an option? Honestly, it's going to be that there are other things that we can do to support you through this dying phase, that your family can feel that they can be with you and you can have a natural death, not a prolonged death, but a natural death supported by actually hospice, making sure you have enough pain medicine, make sure that you are physically supported and kept as comfortable as possible. And I think there's just going to be more work in this area and how we present that to people. I understand for some, the appeal of this, but I think that those of you, especially those dealing with the Orthodox population, just know that this is not going to be something that's going to be on their menu of things that are going to be acceptable to them. So how we're going to support them is really how we can support a different kind of dying rather than someone dying on a ventilator or dying with a peg tube. Is there a different way we can support people that they have natural death, not a death that has so much intervention? Because that's another intervention that we're staying away from interventions. We're allowing death to happen naturally.
I apologize for putting you on the spot. I also think that you answered that so beautifully, and it's helpful to hear, the nuance and the different ways in which, you approach that question, because I think understandably it's really on everyone's mind. And I love that someone, wrote in the chat, like, it's just passed in Illinois, like everyone is aware of this. And I think, certainly the patients and families we come across will have different approaches or different requests, and the chaplains coming across those requests will deal with it. And however, what way is going to be, in alignment with their practice. But I think that it is particularly important to know that when these questions come up, like, could we turn to Amecha? And as chaplains, if families are struggling, that's an address that they could turn to, because it may not seem as obvious, but my sense is that you guys, really are a resource to navigate some of these questions when they come up.
Right. And we're, again, this, just passed to New York and it passed to New Jersey a while ago. So while in Canada, this has been utilized quite a bit, it hasn't been, not in New Jersey, and I don't remember how long ago, but I think it was more than, maybe it was even 2 years ago. So this is going to be a process and we will, hopefully it'll make us better at what we do and making sure that we support the dying maybe better than we've been doing now. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. Just in the last minutes that we have together, I want to pull out you've communicated so much about how there's a desire to support and collaborate with chaplains. And I'm just wondering if you can speak more to, what Amitai thinks about a partnership with chaplains, what you would want experienced chaplains to hear and take away from this session. What you feel is really important from Amitai to convey to an AJC.
I will be honest that until I started working for Amitai, I actually didn't have a sense so much of what chaplains did. So I will tell you from just so I'm wearing my lay
Most people
leadership.
don't. Most people.
Right. My lay leadership that I think that it would be helpful for the population to know exactly who you are, how you are a resource for them, that you're more than a resource like, oh, Shabbos, I'm in the hospital and I need electric candles to light so I can, I need some place to find out, where is their kosher food, that you offer so many more services than that. So I'm going to put that a little bit on you, that I think there's definitely more information out there that people in the community, you're a fabulous resource that's probably very often probably underutilized by people because they don't know about your expertise and what you bring to the table. I think that from a perspective of Amitai, what they can offer to you, we are there for you. We want to work with you. We're happy to do programming with you, either individually in your hospitals. I did a program at a local hospital about just cultural sensitivity when working with Orthodox patients. I'll just throw this out there. Sometimes that in order to open a conversation with you have a Hasidic patient or they're very clearly by the way they're dressing, that if you walk into the room and you say, oh, is there a rabbi that you would like me to be speaking to? You open up the idea that I get you. I understand you. I'm going to work with you and I understand who you are as a person. So, but if there are places like that we could come in and help, love to have, come in and help you either virtually or in person if we can, but also to know that we're a resource both on our website and also call us. We're available to answer questions. We have rabbi partners, we have physician partners, and now we have chaplain partners. You're actually, I would say, our newest partner group that we're working with. So I look forward to just more collaboration and see where other places that we can work together. So
we love that so much. I'm going to bring in some questions that came in as you were speaking.
Okay.
There is a question about sort of where you have representation. So the person asked specifically about are you in Baltimore? But let's say in different parts of the country where someone wants to access Amitai, what do they do?
So
is it primarily through the website?
Is right, either to direct people to the website, or they can always call. They can call me, they can call our hotline. So that's one way. As far as going to places we're still a very small group. We do go to, we've been in Baltimore. We would come back. We could definitely set something up. My goal, and I live in the Northeast. I live, so I'm very much in New Jersey and New York, Connecticut. But I could definitely go, and maybe we're expanding our group to see other people that might be able to go to other communities if you're looking for someone to come in and do some work, face-to-face work. But one of the advantages today, we do a lot of programming on, like we're doing tonight. Everyone's home, maybe you're in your pajamas, but we're, that we can do a lot of programming on Zoom if that works for you too. So just be in touch with me. I think we'll have the names of everyone that registered. And Allison, I'm happy, just if you can send everyone my contact information, happy to share it. Okay.
And Basi, really, not only follows through on that, but is incredibly excellent and supportive in doing that. As the director of community outreach, again, I'm just going to say personally, like I've experienced that tremendous support and partnership and creativity in figuring out like what is the need in this specific community and how can we address it, and how can maybe it's something new that hasn't been done before, like, but let's do it. That's, you're very, very innovative and flexible to try to meet needs. So I really appreciate that from Amecha and also specifically from you. Yeah. So we're going to close. I know, Basi, you gave like a final sentence, but especially since other questions came in, I just wanted to ask, is there anything else that you want us to know, or any final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think we covered. First, I just know how much I appreciate you. I appreciate the work that you do. I'm also interested in hearing more about, like, I know a lot about hospital chaplaincy, less about the people that are in the community. Love to hear about that. So please be in touch with me. And let's build together. Let's see how we can just, make each of our jobs better, more meaningful. And I look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. We fully agree. We're better together. We want to be, a Jewish community that has achdut, that has unity in sharing resources and supporting each other. So I think, I just want to say out loud, like it goes the other direction too. We want to be able to support Amecha, and, the areas in which we as chaplains can be, supports to you in terms of the work that you do, but also, in terms of the people that you're serving. And I know someone said, hospice chaplaincy and community chaplaincy.
The truth is hospice chaplaincy. That would be great for us even to have like a group just with the hospice chaplaincy and also hear about your work and see how we could support that. Fantastic. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you to Amecha. Thank you to Basi. Thank you to Allison. Thank you to all of you for being here tonight. And for those who are going to be listening in the future, thank you for listening and being a part of this partnership and this learning opportunity together. We really, this means a lot. And I pray that we go Malim Bikdusha, we continue in our, going higher and higher in the service that we're providing together. Thank you all. Laila Tov.
Have a good night.
NeshamaCast is a production of Neshama, Association of Jewish Chaplains. Thank you to Basi Taubes of Ematai for her engaging conversation with Rabbanit Lisa Newborn, our NAJC president. Additional thanks for logistical support to Allison Atterbury, NAJC executive director, and the NAJC social media committee. For resources provided by Ematai on navigating aging and end-of-life issues through Jewish wisdom and halacha, go to www.ematai.org. And you can find additional resources for Jewish chaplaincy through NAJC at www.najc.org. Please consider making a contribution to NAJC to support NeshamaCast and all of the vital work that NAJC does to promote Jewish spiritual care. We also welcome sponsorship from institutions where NAJC chaplains work. Please write to me at neshamacast@gmail.com to discuss a gift or sponsorship opportunity, or click on the link in the show notes to donate. A transcript for this episode is available automatically in the Apple Podcasts app. Our theme music is a Niggun for Ki'anu Amecha, written and performed by Reb-Cantor Lisa Levine. Please help others find the show by rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts. We welcome comments and suggestions for future programming at neshamacast@gmail.com. And be sure to follow NAJC on Facebook to learn more about Jewish spiritual care happening in our communities. May we all work together to heal our world.